Good afternoon and Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to 2022 and the Chamber's 2022 State Legislative Kickoff Forum, presented by Medical Associates Clinic and Health Plans, Midwest One, Dubuque Bank and Trust, Q Casino, Hotel Julian, and of course, TH Media and Q Casino. My name is Molly Grover, and I am the President and CEO of the Dubuque Area Chamber of Commerce, and we're thrilled to be hosting everyone for today's conversation. Advocacy is truly the cornerstone of our mission to create our member success by building a pro-business future. Those efforts begin and end with advocacy. We work with all of our elected officials at the local level, the state level, and the federal level to advance policies that foster a robust business climate. Hence our forum here today, the 2022 Iowa Legislative Session Kickoff. So before we get started, I would like to invite the Chamber's Government Division Chair, Mr. Chad Wilbers, the President and CEO of Unity Point Healthcare Family Hospital, for some opening remarks. Chad.
Hey, thank you there, Molly. Definitely my pleasure to serve as the government chair since I think the past July here. Very proud of the changes and improvements that we've made within the Business Advocacy Council, otherwise known as BAC. We in healthcare, of course, love ourselves some acronyms. So the BAC has a very aggressive, as some of you have seen, very aggressive, yet attainable, very realistic agenda for 2022. So just want to thank in large part Ryan Senft, who some of you might have seen just a little bit ago, our newish VP of Government and External Affairs that started us on this journey in August. And with that, the foundation, the starting point was a series of 6 roundtables that were industry specific, very intense, very in-depth discussions. And we had, it was Ryan, 100 businesses that plugged in, that provided input. And then in parallel to that, we had a pretty robust surveying process, both at the beginning and after each of those sessions, which also in large part drove the agenda. The committee itself, the BAC, we doubled in size thanks to the recruitment efforts. So overall, just know a great process, a lot of reinvestment, which has led to an improved product. And one that we're proud to talk about today, to share with our legislators, as well as later on in Des Moines. So thank you, legislators, for joining us today. And also thank you for all the members that have been part of the process, a part of the committee, and are here today. You guys are the ones that make it happen. Thanks so much, Molly. I'll send it back to you.
No, thank you, Chad. Appreciate you. So this event would not be possible without the support of our ultimate presenting sponsors. Once again, to recognize them, Dubuque Bank and Trust, Hotel Julian Dubuque, Medical Associates Clinic and Health Plans, Midwest One Bank, Q Casino, and TH Media. A special shout out to Hotel Julian Dubuque. As of Tuesday, this past week, the event was going to be live and in person, and we pivoted very quickly based on the recommendation of local healthcare leaders and experts to a virtual platform. So we really appreciate our friends and our partners and our sponsors at Hotel Julian Dubuque, who I know are on the call with us today. We'd much rather be together enjoying a fabulous meal, as only Hotel Julian can do, but thank you once again. So today's event sponsors, one more time, are our platinum sponsors, and I will read that list. Anderson Window and Door, Cartograph, Collins Community Credit Union, Digital Dubuque, Envision, Fidelity Bank, Forge Social, the Grand River Center, Holiday Inn, John Deere Dubuque Works, Mercy One, Stonehill Communities, Town Square Media, Unity Point Healthcare, Finley Hospital, and U.S. Bank. It is now my distinct pleasure to turn it over to the man of the hour, the board chair of the chamber, the president of the Friedman Group of Shared Partners, and he's just an awesome guy, our 21-22 board chair, Mr. Scott D'Souza.
I never know how to respond to those comments like that, but they're always very welcome. Thank you, Molly, for recognizing our sponsors who make events like this a reality. Today we'll engage in a facilitated discussion around the issues that impact the business community and potential action our elected state leaders can take to address them. Before we start, though, I do want to thank all of our elected officials for their service to the community. I know we all greatly appreciate that. I also want to note that all of our legislators were invited to participate today, But unfortunately, both Representative Shannon Lundgren and Representative Steve Bradley send their apologies for not being able to make it due to conflicts that precluded their attendance. For the legislators with us today, we're going to provide time for a brief introductory comments and thoughts as we head into the 2022 session. In the interest of time, please keep your comments to 2 minutes. Our timekeeper, Justine Paradiso, will keep us honest. With that, we will start with Senator Pam Yokham. Senator Yokham, your thoughts as we head into the 2022 session.
Oh, Pam, you're still muted.
There you go. I think you're muted. There we go.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted again.
Perfect. There we go. Very good.
Okay, thank you so much, Scott, and to all those who are sponsoring this event today, and of course to the Chamber of Commerce. So warm wishes for a joyful, healthy, and more civil 2022. And let's hope that this is the year we can crush this COVID-19 pandemic and get our economy humming again in full recovery. So I think the legislature is going to have a number of issues that we need to tackle this coming session. First and foremost, of course, is the workforce crisis, workforce shortage crisis, childcare, quality of life amenities, brain health, public health, funding for education from early childhood through post-secondary education, and of course, all the consequences and problems that we're now facing with the changing climate. I think we all know taxes are going to be on the agenda again, or at least that's what I hear all the Republican leaders talk about when I catch the news coverage. So I'm sure we'll be having some conversations about that as well today. But I did catch part of your news conference a little earlier, and almost everything you said, I don't think any of us can disagree with. We need to do more to make sure that we are addressing the workforce crisis. Let me just say that 22 years ago, believe it or not, then Governor Vilsack actually sounded the alarm that we had a very slow population growth in Iowa and a looming workforce crisis if we didn't start attracting new workers, younger workers, and become a more welcoming state. So here we are 22 years later, and we're still talking about it. So I think there's a number of ways that we can begin to address this issue. And of course, Future Ready Iowa at least provided some of the framework on how we can address some of this. And now it's up to us to figure out how to pay for it all. So thanks again.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Kelker, your thoughts on what lies ahead in 2022?
Well, thank you everybody for joining in today. I'm looking forward to getting down to session. It always creeps upon us sooner than what we'd like it to be, but we'll be heading down there and gaveling in Monday. And so I think we're going to see a pretty big, bold session, continuing the momentum that we've done the past few years. We've all got different roles going into the session. So I'm going to be serving once again this year as one of the assistant majority leaders. My committee assignments this year are going to be, I'm going to continue chairing ethics, vice chairing commerce. I serve on appropriations, transportation, state government, and then I'm also going to be chairing the economic development budget this year. So a few new things, a lot of familiar things. But as we go into this session, we all have different wheelhouses, obviously, and we focus on those specific areas. There's not one area that I haven't heard from, as Pam Yokham alluded to, is workforce. It's impacting everybody. There isn't an industry that I have not heard that it's impacting. I wish that there was a flip of a switch that we could do to solve this problem, but throwing money at stuff isn't going to solve the problem. It's going to be a lot of roundtables, which we've been participating in, to talk about how we can do that, whether it's the education field, whether it's the business field, whether it's the hospitality industry. Every industry is hemorrhaging and hurting. So I think we're going to have to look at some rules and regulations there on how we're going to adapt, not just fix it all in a time, but take some steps on the ladder to get there. It boils down to quality of life issues. You know, you got to have great communities, great schools, great hospitals, good education, and communities that people like to live in and thrive in. So it all goes hand in hand. And so we got to kind of chunk all those nuggets up and hopefully put them together into the pie. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kelker. Representative James, your comments on 2022.
Thank you to the chamber, Scott, Molly, Chad, Justine. I get to see your hand coming out there. Thanks for holding us accountable. It's always good to be with you at the start of our session. And I just wanted to say that especially thanks to Ryan, who has been hosting a lot of different conversations with you all and around the community that help educate us and help us keep a pulse on what you need in the community. And so meeting those needs is really important to us. So, and this conversation is really helpful as we prepare to gavel it on Monday, as Carrie said, which has come shockingly quick this year. So, but very excited to get back to work. As I look into the session, you know, I certainly don't have a crystal ball and I am not in the majority party, but, you know, the issues that I am passionate about working on have to do with, and they're not new issues for me. You're all very well aware of them. I've been hard at work over the last 3 years on issues around manufactured housing protections. That's a really important piece of our affordable housing crisis in Iowa. So we have to get pushing in that regard. Some really good bipartisan work that's being done there. Obviously, insulin access and affordable, you know, healthcare. You know, Chad, you chime in on how we can help make sure that people have access and affordable care that they need. Insulin is something that I've always talked about as well. Brain health is a big topic of conversation right now. We have some incredible community leaders right here in Dubuque helping us end the stigma, Brain Health Now being one of those important organizations. And I'm excited to further that conversation and keep pushing it out around the state. And then I am a mom with young kids and interact a lot with young families, and childcare is an issue that continues to challenge our families that we need to address, and we keep chunking little nuggets out of that, but we need some bold, sweeping responses to that so that our young families have what they need.
Thank you, Representative James. Representative Eisenhart, your comments.
Thank you, Scott. I'd like to thank the chamber for moving this to a virtual format. I think it was very important given the circumstances. We tried to talk over the last couple of years about getting beyond COVID. I think it's becoming pretty clear that that's not going to be possible, and we need to learn how to live with COVID. And that's not going to be possible until we recognize that we've grossly underinvested in our public health capacity at the national, state, and local level. And as we look at our budget, we need to figure out how to reinvest in prevention in general as a healthcare strategy, because it's pretty clear we can easily, and we have overwhelmed our healthcare system when we don't do that. So I'll leave it at that. Maybe there's more to say here as we get on with other questions. I would say in general, our ability to help you is dependent on how well you stay in contact with us on an immediate basis. I think Ryan is going to do a great job helping you with that. Many times we don't see bills or amendments until the morning they're passed out of committee, and sometimes passed out of the floor of the House and Senate and signed by the governor. So there'll be a need to be able, there'll be a necessity to react very quickly to the opportunities that are out there. The last point I'll make, and I see my time is out, is that we do have a lot of federal resources at our disposal at the state and local level. Please be involved in those conversations about how those are allocated, especially as it relates to some of your priorities. I have some of my priorities of my own. I'll just refer you to my website, iowarescueplan.com, iowarescueplan.com, and you'll see some of the ideas I forwarded over the last several months.
Thank you, Representative Eisenhart. I'm very happy that Representative Bradley was able to jump on. I certainly appreciate him joining us. Representative Bradley, if you could just, we asked the other legislators to just give a few brief introductory comments of your thoughts as we head into the 2022 session.
Can't hear you.
Representative Bradley, I think you're muted.
How's that?
Perfect. Very good. Thank you, sir.
I didn't hear what anybody else said. I'm really looking forward to getting back into session next Monday. My wife and I are heading down on probably this weekend. I think some of the major things is giving back that $1.2 billion. And, I don't know how we're going to do that or what the form of that is, but yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I think we have to increase our farming economy. And I think we're doing a good job. I think that field bill, that's going to be a major bill this year. And like I say, I'm basically looking forward to getting back to Des Moines. And I apologize because I'm going to be jumping back and forth here too. So.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Bradley. Well, let's hop right into things with a question focused on workforce. Iowa's workforce still remains below pre-pandemic levels. In fact, workforce participation, the rate of people working or actively seeking employment, has fallen to its lowest level since the mid-1980s. Workforce challenges are impacting every sector of our business community. Our employers need solutions that will address the issue in both short and long term. We need more people. Iowa is the only state in the nation that has not doubled their population since 1900. This must be addressed if we want to grow our economy and our communities across Iowa. The Chamber believes Iowa must work to attract new talent and support the development and retention of talent here at home, including investment in placemaking projects and our education institutions, reducing barriers to employment such as childcare, and keeping Iowa a welcoming place for all. What efforts do you foresee around workforce in the coming sessions? Does anyone want to take a first stab at that? And I'll pick on Senator Kelker because I know her best. So, Senator, I'll let you go first.
Okay, well, thanks for putting me in the hot seat first, Scott. No problem. Obviously, workforce, as I just alluded to in my opening comments, is a huge issue for everyone. And, I don't think that everyone kind of relies on government when there's a problem to fix it. And I don't think it's just going to be the government that can fix it. I think it's going to be a lot of businesses, a lot of discussions, and a lot of topics that we need to put into that puzzle piece. Our population, I've worked since I've been 14. And when I look around all these people that are not working, I don't understand it. So I try to slip into that different mentality a little bit that I've been working for many years. Why people choose not to. We do have jobs out there. It's just we're somehow, I don't know if it's because the benefit system as well, there's a cliff benefit to getting people back into work too. But once again, are they not going to work because we don't have daycare facilities for their children? I think that's probably part of the cause too. I don't think it's just one solution, but I do think it's going to be some continuous, hard, and maybe uncomfortable discussions that we have to have with some businesses on how we can get people back to work and how we can make them comfortable in that work environment, whether it be, providing daycare, whether it be providing different solutions that makes their work environment a little bit more friendly. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Yokham, your thoughts on workforce development?
Well, thank you. I thought you were going to keep going the other way around. Okay. So I think I mentioned early on that the Future Ready Iowa actually provides a really good framework for many of the issues that we're talking about today. Unfortunately, it hasn't always been funded at the level that it needs to. But for example, Future Ready Iowa includes Employer Innovation Fund. It includes funding for apprenticeship programs. It includes funding for child care challenge grants. All of those issues are issues we are talking about today. And I think that the framework is there. We need to find the money to pay for it. I know that taxes are going to be on the agenda again this year, and I get that. And I hope we can have a more meaningful discussion on all of that before this hour is up. But certainly childcare and education, those are primary issues if we're going to get people back to work and getting this pandemic controlled. I know that in this pandemic, we have a lot more people who took early retirement. They weren't planning to, but they did. We have more people who have perhaps have reprioritized what's important to them in life and have decided it costs a whole lot of money to work, that it's just as beneficial to stay home and take care of their own kids, and the list goes on. So this pandemic has really put a spotlight on many, many issues that affect our personal and our professional lives. We simply have fewer people right now, even in the workforce. Again, I think you mentioned in some of your comments, we need to become a more welcoming state. We need to find a way to attract new Iowans, younger Iowans, to want to live here. And certainly placemaking, I always call it quality of life issues, they are critically important as well if we want people to come here and want to work, play, learn, and have, you know, make Iowa their home. So those are all big investments we need to be making. I do know that 4 different child care centers in Dubuque County did get some child care challenge grants through the Future Ready Iowa program. I have some concerns about some of the tax issues that we're contemplating, mostly because the state legislature took on additional funding of mental health and other programs in the last session. And a lot of those programs are now coming to a head where we got to figure out how to pay for them. At the same time, this state received $9.2 billion from the federal government during this pandemic. And we've used that money for broadband construction and other issues and priorities. And that money's going to go away. So we got to figure out how we're going to budget and pay for all this in the future and long term now. So I think we need to be very prudent and really focus on solving the problems that are before us today. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Yokham. Representative James, your comments on workforce.
I really appreciate that you continue to push this forward as one of Iowa's greatest challenges. I agree with that, certainly. We have in the country 10 million new Americans in the workforce, but we actually have fewer Iowans in the workforce today than we did a decade ago. And those are pretty staggering realities. We have other states in our region, as we've all sat through chamber presentations on, such as Minnesota, that, you know, a state similar to us that is thriving and doing really well, and population increasing and industry booming. And so I think because, you know, we have a challenge of wanting to maintain, recruit and retain our people, and we want to also remain competitive in the region, we have to take this workforce seriously, this issue seriously. There are some challenges. I was just in a conversation with a young college, soon-to-be graduate, a senior at one of our local colleges, and I asked him, are you planning to stay in Iowa? And he said, there is not opportunity for me to stay in Iowa. And he said, and I want to stay in Iowa. And I think that part of what, you know, we need to wrestle with as a state is that, you know, when we are in the news nationally for politically polarizing issues, it doesn't help our cause to recruit and retain people. We have to invest in affordable housing so that we have places where young people can buy into the market and build a home here. We need to have high quality childcare availability. You know, we need moms. There are moms who need and want to work, but need that space for their kids to be a part of the workforce. We need to be welcoming enough of politically polarizing issues. We have to, and I appreciate Chamber and the business community have stepped forward on a number of occasions to say, hey, listen, this does not help us recruit and retain people. And so we need you to be vocal about that as well. Justine, I see you. One other thought is that I appreciate your priorities. Always, the Chamber is always rallying around education and the investment there. We have chronically underfunded our schools, and we have slid from some of the best schools and educational opportunities in the country. And because of a chronic underfunding have, you know, our teachers are burnt out and our kids don't have the opportunity. It's basic stuff. You know, we need an educated population. We need an opportunity for our population. We need homes for them, and we need a good place for their kids. So some basic issues that we need to take seriously. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative James. Just as a reminder to those on the call, if you got questions for our legislators, put them in the chat feature, and we'll pose those to our legislators as we move along. Representative Eisenhart, your thoughts on workforce and workplace.
Thank you. I served on Governor Vilsack's Iowa 2010 Council back in the year 2000. So that's 20 years ago now. And that focused on workforce and population issues. I don't recall that a lot of the ideas that came out of that gained traction. Maybe we can go back and look at some of those ideas. I can tell you one of the top issues was this state and this country need to have a better policy with respect to immigration. I don't think we're going to grow our workforce without welcoming people to our country and to our state from other countries. Our birth rates just aren't going to be able to sustain a growing economy and a growing workforce on their own. And I think that needs to come, the initiative from that needs to come from communities and businesses that want to be more welcoming. You look at rural Iowa, what are some of the growing communities that have some real vitality? It's the Storm Lakes, it's the West Liberties, it's the other small to medium communities, Marshalltown, that have found ways to integrate an immigrant population into their workforces. I would say that's the number one big issue that we need to be about tackling. In the meantime, I think we need to look at recognize a dynamic that I don't hear discussed a lot, and I think Senator Kelker realizes it's a major issue in the hospitality industry, sustaining the workforce there. Because employers are competing for a smaller pool of workers, you're having to raise your wages and benefits. Guess what? That means a lot of folks who used to need 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet don't need to have 2 or 3 jobs anymore. And it's those employers that were offering those second and third jobs are maybe suffering the most and having the most difficult time. And so that's another reason why we need to look more widely at the workforce and how can we use this temporary increase in revenues that we're experiencing as a state to reinvest in targeted programs that will benefit directly some of those workforce challenges. And I would just say one of the ideas that I've thrown out there is, let's reinvest in Vision Iowa. Let's put a big chunk of money to allow communities to grow their tourism attractions, because guess what? People in Iowa also take advantage of those amenities. And that's one of the things that'll continue to improve our quality of life. I don't think we'd be where we are as a community without the investments we've made in our riverfront, etc. I think that's a strategic investment we can make, not only with our ARP funds, but also with our temporary surplus.
Thank you, Representative Eisenhart. Representative Bradley had to step away just for a moment, so I'll go on to our next question. This has to do with tax increment financing. Tax increment financing is the sole economic development tool for municipalities to leverage for investment. TIF has been an available tool for Dubuque, resulting in tremendous job growth and investment. Whether in Dubuque, Dyersville, Cascade, and beyond, this tool has been integral to getting projects over the finish line when other financing options have been exhausted. I would like you each to share your thoughts on TIF, and will you commit to maintaining tax increment financing in its full current form? And Representative Eisenhart, I'll start with you.
Well, as you suggested, this has been kind of an evergreen issue that we've dealt with pretty much every cycle, legislative cycle, since I've been on the legislature. And for the most part, those efforts to make wholesale changes in particular have not gained traction. And honestly, I don't see a pathway for that to happen again this session. The one person who is always at the front end of making those changes was the representative from Southeast Iowa, Tom Sands. He's no longer in the legislature. He happens to be the head of the Iowa Taxpayers Association, which continues to make TIF reform one of their priorities. But they have a number of other priorities that I think maybe are ahead of that. So I think what we said when we did make some changes a few years ago was, let's collect better data about how that program is being used, and then if there are intelligent adjustments need to be made that are appropriate based on actual data on how it's being used, let's take a close look at that and adjust the program, just like we think we should try to adjust every tax program to achieve their intended goals. I'm on the Tax Expenditure Review Committee. This program did not come up this year, but we always want to prioritize whether or not those programs are achieving their intended purposes. I think in Dubuque County, they are achieving their intended purposes. So I see no reason why wholesale changes should be made based on the suggestion that the program is not being used for its intended purposes.
Thank you, Representative Eisenhart. Senator Kelker, your thoughts on the commitment to maintaining tax increment financing in its current form?
Yes, thank you. I actually just had a meeting earlier with Mike Van Billigen and Terry Goodwin, and we talked about TIF, and I've been in contact with Jackie Ray out of the Dubuque or Dyersville Economical Development Office. So obviously it's a big tool in our toolbox, and as anything, they have to be reviewed. But I think Dubuque is a shining example of it. Unfortunately, there's good actors and bad actors in all the stuff that we do. And that's usually where it creeps something open, and we have to look at those things. So TIF has been a huge tool to Dyersville, Cascade, the communities mentioned in Dubuque. So they're not in the bad actor list, but unfortunately there are bad actors in that. So we just have to make sure that we're making sure that they're being corrected and that they're being utilized. And to our advantage, it's a quality of life issue, creative placemaking, all of those things that we're talking about. So historic tax credits as well. So you'll see my support for TIF again this year.
Great, thank you, Senator Kelker. Representative James, your comments on TIF.
Sure, just to get it right out there, right at the front end, I'm committed to supporting it in its current form. I don't know how many of you know my background, my story, but my husband, we came here. I was not born and raised in Iowa. We came here for employment. My husband had a job opportunity at the University of Dubuque and was recruited to be a professor. And one of the things that I, have this beautiful memory of is flying in over the Mississippi and just, the beauty of this area is just stunning. And then we landed and, we toured the Millwork District and, the river walk. And we had a deep sense that the city was and the county was investing in itself. And that there was a place for us here. And so I think that part of all of these tax credits, the TIF and the historic tax credits, quality of life is really important in recruiting and retaining workforce and building our population. This idea of cutting our way to prosperity makes no sense in my mind. I want to see our cities and our counties and our state investing in ourselves. We are worth it, and Iowans are worth it. And, I feel really proud of the place where we live. And I'll be honest, all of us on this Zoom are regularly bragging about the things that Dubuque and our county are up to on a regular basis at the Capitol. We're a shining example of just an incredible community. So you are a part of that, Chamber. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Representative James. Senator Yokham, your thoughts on TIF?
Of course, yes, I have been a long-term supporter of TIF. I know that in just the last 10 years, there have been 47 different projects, and TIF has invested about $34 million, and that leveraged about $403 million in additional investment. So it's been a great tool and one of the few tools that local governments have to really attract and retain businesses and workers. That last 10 years, TIF alone helped to retain almost 3,300 positions and created about 1,000 new jobs. So TIF has worked well here, and I want to make sure that our cities and our local communities continue to benefit from that tool they have in their toolbox, along with historic preservation tax credits. We would not see the Millwork District if it were not for those historic preservation credits and some of the changes and restoration that we see along Lower Main Street and now hopefully Central Avenue as well. So I'm with you. I will fight to make sure that we retain that tool for our local communities.
Very good. Thank you, Senator Yokham. We do have a question. We're getting some questions from the floor, so I'll open that up for anyone that got a question from the floor, and we could probably direct this to Representative Eisenhart. I don't know if we've started with him off the bat, so we'll start with Representative Eisenhart.
Actually, the question is, I think, referring to what Lindsay had said about speaking with a college student. It comes from Margie Wardwood with Goodwill Industries. She says, I'm curious to know what field of work the college student was wanting that Iowa didn't have available.
Well, so thank you for that question. That's a great question. It's a twofold question. Part of it is the major that he is in is not reflective of what he wants to go into. So it sounds like he really wants to kind of go into the tech industry. You know, some of those startups, you know, have some pull for him. In addition to that, the other piece was a quality of life. I mean, he basically, you know, kind of lamented not feeling like there was, you know, he's a young 20-something, a place for him to meet other people and grow his social networks and relax. And so I think that some of the conversations that you all are having and that we need to continue to have is, you know, how does placemaking and quality of life issues play into this conversation? How can we best prop them up? And, you know, I think Dubuque is doing a really decent job of that, but there's always room to grow. Did I answer that fully?
Yes. No, did great. Another question from the floor, Justine?
All right, and we'll start with Chuck Eisenhart on this. The question comes from Devin Jewell with Hawkeye Community Care Center. There's been mention of tax and workforce. They go hand in hand. Iowa has one of the most difficult, complex tax systems in the country. How can we expect to attract a workforce? How can we pretend to be a welcoming workforce with such a prohibitive tax code? Why would students want to stay in Iowa when they can work in states that have no income tax?
Representative Eisenhart?
Here you go, Senator Kelker.
Senator Kelker, if you want to comment on that, I see you're raising your hand.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to take that. It's true. Our tax system, it needs to be looked at. And I talk about maybe looking at it, but modernizing it. You know, our tax system needs to be brought up to the 21st century. And that does include sales tax and income tax and all those. Now, when we've talked and we've met, we do talk about lowering income tax. Now, bringing it to a zero level frightens me right now, because you know, once you put that into place, you've got to climb back out of it if need be. So I do know that we're going to be looking at the whole tax bracket, income taxes. We're trying to lower that, so Iowa is appealing for people to stay here. People go to Florida for 6 months plus 1 day, so they don't have to pay income taxes. And so they also have Mickey Mouse ears and a few other things, sunny bright days that we don't have. But I do think that it is a big, huge part of why people feel nickel and dime here, is because our tax system it needs to be updated, it needs to be looked at, and let's give it back to the people that are working for it.
Thank you, Senator Kelker. Senator Yokham, your comments on our tax system.
I'm muted again. Keep getting muted. Okay, so yes. I mean, the discussion right now at the state level, at least in my conversations with Senator Dawson, who chairs the tax committee in the Senate, is that he was talking to me at least about a 5-year phase out of the entire individual income tax system. And that's about half of the state's revenue. So I know a lot of the programs that we're talking about today all cost money. Every one of them costs money, whether it's investing in childcare or the cliff effect or workforce development or whatever it might be. And right now we do have about $661 million that we need to set aside just this year to pay corporate tax credits. So what I'm going to say is that as much as I hear what Senator Kelker is saying, then we have to say, then why do so many young people want to go to Chicago? Or why do so many young people want to go to Minneapolis, St. Paul? They actually have a higher tax structure than we do. And why is it that South Dakota has even a lower population rate and growth rate than we do, then they have no income tax? Or that the Kentucky lawmakers had to just reverse their decision on some major tax issues policy that they did just a few years ago. What I believe in is a tax policy needs to meet 4 different criteria right now. That is, number one, it's got to be fair, needs to be transparent so that you know that how it is competitively against other states. I get that. And of course, we need to take into consideration our budget situation. I think I mentioned earlier that we got just this enormous amount of federal funding that came into Iowa during this pandemic that's been used for broadband and a host of other issues. And that money goes away. We got to figure out how we're going to continue paying that long term. And then finally, I just lost my train of thought. But anyway, we'll keep going. But I think that as long as we are fair, we are transparent, we're taking into account current budget demands and situations. And I know, I was thinking, we really need to do an examination of all of those corporate tax credits to determine if the taxpayer is getting the return on investment and what those original credits were intended to do. So until we take care of some of those issues, I think we need to be very prudent. I would hope that we're going to reduce our taxes on those who are earning less than $150,000 a year and stay focused on really working families and helping people climb the ladder. Because I think in the long run, that helps all of our businesses, especially our Main Street businesses, when working folk has some money in their pocket to spend. So thank you for the question, whoever did it.
Thank you, Senator Yokham. Representative Eisenhart, your comments on the tax situation?
Thank you. It's a multifaceted question that if we were to sit down at a coffee shop, it might take more than 1 cup of coffee to work through. But I would just make a couple of observations. The research has shown that, when you ask people what are the major issues that either attract them to Iowa or pull them away, taxes are not necessarily high on the list. There are a lot of other issues, we've talked about some of them here, quality of life, that are high on the list. But with respect to young people, especially, I've been thinking a lot about this in recent years. We need to find better ways to make education affordable so that student debt does not become an albatross that they carry around. We do know that Iowa tends to be, relatively speaking, a lower wage state. We aren't necessarily cheaper as far as education goes, so the ability to repay that student debt is somewhat more difficult in Iowa. So I'm thinking, why can't we come up with some ways to use some of our available resources to assist students in repaying their debt, or maybe the interest on their debt to start with, if they're willing to make commitments to stay and work in Iowa for a foreseeable future. So I think we need to get creative, and maybe that involves some changes to the tax code. But I think students need to see, young people need to see and recognize themselves in the proposals and the advances that we make.
Very good. Thank you, Representative Eisenhart. Representative James, your comments.
Last but not least, right?
Certainly not least. Certainly not.
Thank you. I can resonate with a lot of what my colleagues have just said. Simplifying the tax code and taking a look at that and having an honest conversation is a really important thing to do. We should be doing that every single year about a number of issues. For the person who asked the question, thank you so much for the question. I have not heard, to the degree it sounds like that you have heard, that is that eliminating the income tax is what is going to incentivize young people to stay in the state. I haven't heard that. I'm around college campuses a lot because of my husband's profession. I spent my career as a college chaplain before moving into the legislature. So that is not one of the barriers that I have heard, nor is it one of the barriers that I hear the business community shouting as like, we have to do this when it comes to recruiting and retaining people. Things like quality of life, childcare, affordability of housing, is one thing. And then from people, I hear wages, that is important, is they want an economic opportunity. And that is something that I think you are an important piece of this equation as well. So if we were to eliminate, just so we have some numbers, if we were to eliminate the income tax, that would be roughly, I mean, and this is a conservative estimate, roughly $4 billion of our state budget. That's nearly half of our state budget. And so that in and of itself, a move like that is going to cause some unintended consequences that could have a ripple effect that would harm recruiting and retaining workforce. What would that mean for our colleges? What would that mean for funding our Department of Corrections or public safety? What would that mean for making sure that we have the basic amenities that we all need to live in a civil and productive society? So I think that we have to be deeply thoughtful and calculated about these particular conversations, and you need to be involved in them. The public needs to be involved in them. And so I'm glad that you're bringing it up and asking, and I hope that you will come and visit at the Capitol or join subcommittees and committees and weigh in on these issues, because we certainly need to wrestle them out. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative James. Justine, any other questions from the floor?
Nothing has come in. Feel free to type your questions into the chat if you have any, and we will be sure to share them with our guests today.
We do have time for maybe one or two more questions. So.
Yeah, sure. I'll ask one, Scott. This is Mike Clausen with the Dubuque Bank and Trust. I'm actually here at the chamber with the group here. One of the questions that I have, and I think I saw the article today that there were, I think it was 2 Democratic senators or legislators from the state of Iowa have recommended legalizing marijuana. Because we talk about budgets and finding those additional cash flows, I'd like to get your guys' perspective as to, does it make sense to legalize marijuana to help with those cash flow deficiencies if we were to do something with the different tax codes? What does that look like, in the future as we go forward?
Representative James, you want to take that one? We want to start off with you this time.
Are we present?
Okay.
Lindsay, you're muted, Lindsay.
Here we go.
Lindsay, you're muted.
I think maybe we were trying to mute and unmute. Am I still muted?
No, you're good.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. That is not a reflection.
I think yep.
We'll come back to you.
Senator Yokham?
And how I feel about this question.
Okay.
Here's the question.
We can't hear you,
Certainly,
Lindsay.
I think that
It's all right. Let's Senator Yokham, if you want to comment, and then we'll come back to Representative James.
Sure. So let me start by saying this. Well, we have had medical marijuana in Iowa for several years now, and we still have not, in my humble opinion, did a very good job of making sure that that program in and of itself is working well in our state. There are several issues connected to this, and quite frankly, I am not opposed to legalizing marijuana in our state, or if not that, then decriminalizing a certain percent, a certain amount that someone could have. Number one, legalizing it gives us more ability to have some control over it, to pass laws to make sure that people are using it safely. It certainly would bring in some tax revenue. And I have had local law enforcement get a hold of me because they're not sure what to do when Illinois has legalized it and people from our state are going over there, getting it and bringing it back. The other issue is that marijuana has been one of those issues in our justice system that has really been very discriminatory toward people of color. They serve time in our jails and our prisons for marijuana, and we need to start thinking through a lot of these issues. I know you're going to find, I was shocked by this statement. My uncle, when I first got elected, he was the warden at Joliet State Penitentiary, and then later went on to be a U.S. Marshal. And when I first got elected, he called me and said, so you need to figure out how to get the profit out of drugs, because our prison system is full of people because of drug issues. And this is not a drug issue. This is a mental health issue. This is a public health issue. They shouldn't be serving time in a prison or a jail for this. And I said, well, geez, John, I wouldn't know how to do that short of legalizing drugs. He said, okay. And he's a warden at Joliet State Penitentiary. So anyway, I was listening to someone who actually has been in law enforcement and was a warden at a pretty big maximum security prison in the state of Illinois. And he was saying we need to rethink our drug policy in this country because it's not working at all. Anyway, there you go. I spilled my guts.
Thank you, Senator Yokham. Senator Kelker, your comments?
I don't see that happening anytime soon.
No, probably not.
I truly don't think that's going to be an issue that we're going to be taking on anytime soon. Medical marijuana, now that's a totally different situation. Recreational marijuana, I think that trail will not be paved anytime soon. I'm a sister of an undercover, my brother, that's what he does, undercover drug work. And so he bends my ear a lot on this. And so, but we are, as Pam said, we are in a state that we're on the border of a state that it's legal and a state that it's not. And so we've got employers that live on opposite sides that can go to the opposite side or show up at work with it or without it. So it is an issue, but that's not the only issue we have living on a border state.
Representative Eisenhart, your comments?
I think it's a conversation we need to have, and that's where all change starts, with conversations. And I think you have some law enforcement people willing to engage in it. I would not do it in order to solve a budget issue or to gain revenue. Obviously, there needs to be a regulatory system to manage it, much like alcohol and tobacco, and that system needs to pay for itself. But highly taxing the product isn't going to solve the problem, because if it's too expensive, people are still going to go to the illicit sources to get products that probably aren't going to be safe for them. So that's part of it. How can we manage this as a public health issue? And that's, I think, that's where the conversation needs to begin. People like to say marijuana is a gateway drug. I'm more convinced that marijuana is a gateway to drug dealers. And that if we can break that relationship, we will be able to get a handle on maybe our meth problem or our opioid problem or our cocaine problem, because that's where the money is for the drug dealers. It's not in the marijuana, but they need that business relationship, right? Follow the money in order to hook people on those more serious drugs. So I think that component of the situation, again, from a healthcare standpoint, needs to be part of the discussion.
Thank you, Representative Eisenhart. Representative James?
Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
I'm so sorry. Every once in a while, you all are freezing up and it says my connection is unstable. So I want to clarify, that's my computer, not my brain, stable today. I am certainly in favor of legalizing a recreational adult use of marijuana. But I do have some, obviously I think we need to have some level of conversation moving forward about what that looks like and how to do that in a way that keeps people safe, in a way that's regulated, in a way that makes sense. So it's happening all across the country. And it's something that Iowans want. Des Moines Registered polled on this particular issue recently in 2021, and 54% of Iowans would like to see this happen in our state. And they're a reputable polling entity. And I think that part of the conversation is around economic development, and in particular, what it means for us to bump up against states who are further along in this conversation than we are. So, but I agree with, I don't have that crystal ball. I have a sense, as Senator Kelker has mentioned, it's probably not going to happen anytime soon. But as Representative Eisenhart said, it begins with conversations like this right now and talking about what are the barriers or what are the issues, what are the concerns, what is law enforcement saying to us one way or another. And so I think that I appreciate the question, and I hope that you engage in conversation with us individually, and then amongst yourself, and let us know what you're hearing.
Very good, thank you. We have time for one more question.
All right, the last question we have is, what is the best time to connect and invite legislators to your organization?
Representative Eisenhardt, you want to answer that?
I would say as long as we can do it this way, there's probably no bad time. We could do it while we're in Des Moines, and I have a Zoom account of my own, and I can set up the meetings. And I think I would love to do more of that. And I have no problem joining anybody at one of the local coffee houses to have smaller conversations. I do believe, as the questioner suggests, there needs to be more regular communication in a more timely way, because a lot of times what we can do, Democrat or Republican, majority or minority, is make sure government is working the way it should for the programs and the agencies that we do have in place. And believe it or not, a phone call from us or an email from us tends to bring a case to the surface that may be languishing on the bottom of somebody's pile. So particularly if you have a personal or a business issue that you want our help in navigating, again, there's no bad time to pick up the phone or send an email.
Thank you, Representative Eisen. Senator Kelker?
I welcome input in meetings anytime. I mean, I'll tell you, this week, everyone's trying to get on our schedule. So this is a crazy week. And I always say, you know, we don't work just when we're in session. So reach to us around the clock all year long, because we all have full-time, or most of us have full-time jobs too. So we are struggling careers and life and family and all that stuff too. But we're your voice, and we don't know what we're hearing unless we hear it from you. So pick up the phone, call us. I met with Mike Van Milligan this morning. I'm like, text me if you need to. Those are the type of relationships that I think Iowa prides itself on as citizen legislatures. So we're just normal citizens that really look out to be your voice down there. So come see us at the Capitol. It's a beautiful building. It's a great place, and truly it reminds us why we're there.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Yokham?
And I am muted again. I keep getting muted. Who keeps doing that to me? I agree with Representative Eisenhardt. Zoom works, email works, text messages work. I think mostly we have to work around our own committee schedules, and I'm the ranking member on a multitude of committees. So we're pretty busy when session starts. But the evening time sometimes will work, or weekends. But we're open. Just communicate as best you can. I check all my emails. I check my text messages. We're good to go. Just talk.
Very good. Thank you, Senator. Representative James?
Sure. I welcome an opportunity to meet with anyone, especially if it involves a cup of coffee. Mine's almost gone. I would say virtual is a great option while we're busy legislating. So if you, in the near term, if you are wanting to connect with us, that's a great option. I would say off season, please invite us, or you know, I don't want to offer that out to everyone, but we'd love to come. I'd love to come and get to know you and what your barriers and issues and challenges are and how we can resolve those and learn from you. So please reach out. I do have young kids, so the school hours are the best for me. Otherwise, I juggle some young kiddo dynamics, but very excited to have a cup of coffee with you. So looking forward to that.
I think you all can remember to use the chamber as a resource when it comes to these issues, and I think those of us that have had the pleasure of working with you folks know it's not a 9-to-5 job. It's not 3 or 4 months a year. It's 365 days a year, and I truly mean I appreciate your service to the community. So again, thank you to our legislators for joining us today. This was a great discussion. We look forward to a pro-business outcomes in 2020 for the 2022 session. Thank you to everyone who was in attendance today. As chamber members, you're integral to the support, the advocacy efforts of the chamber, ensuring we build a robust economy and business climate. Please join us for the 2022 Forecast Luncheon, which is on Tuesday, January 25th, and mark your calendars for Iowa's longest and most beloved legislative reception. That's got to come from the chamber, right? From most beloved legislative reception, Dubuque Night in Des Moines. That will be March 16th. Until then, have a wonderful start to 2022. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, see ya.